Hey everyone, and happy Thursday. Welcome to the Ghost Biker Garage. I am your host, the Ghost Biker, and I am here live at the historic Scott County Jail. From week to week, we're here in different places, and I love traveling. So you just never know where we're going to pop up on Thursday nights. It's either going to be in the garage or here at the jail, or who knows, maybe somewhere else. But tonight we're here, and of course, as you all know, sometimes things happen while we're here doing the show live at the jail. People have seen things over in the I can't even think of my words tonight. Over in the visitation room, or sometimes over back near the cells, we'll hear different things. So if you guys see or hear anything, shout it out there in the comments section. Also, if you have any questions for myself or my guest tonight, go ahead, put it in there. And if you don't mind, just make sure to put it in all caps, just so I make sure that we don't miss anything. Because I know tonight's guest, he's got got a lot of topics to talk about and a lot of cool things. So we want to make sure that we don't miss you guys. Just want to say hello to a few people over here in the chat room. Hello, Dr. Sumner, Susan Purcell, Nancy Weems, Sheila Brown, Carl Jarrell, Reflections of the Paranormal, Claude. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We wouldn't have a great show if you guys didn't tune in with your questions and comments. So really appreciate that. I know Susan, who's in the chat room over here, she was here taking a tour of the jail this past weekend. And speaking of that, we do have a ghost walk with flashlight tour coming up this weekend on Sunday night, as well as several other flashlight tours and ghost walks throughout the remainder of the month. You can go on to our website, www.historicscottcojail, and you can sign up for either the flashlight tour or the ghost walk. Even we do have some guided ghost hunts available too. So go ahead and look on there, get your tickets, because those do sell out quickly. I know there's a couple flashlight tours this month that are actually already sold out. We do limit those at 10. So yeah, just go ahead and check and see what we got out there and get your tickets in. One other thing, we made a pretty exciting announcement this week. I'm gonna go ahead and pull that up on the screen here. We did actually, let me make that full screen. We announced we're opening an escape room. It's going to be opening up soon in one of our cell blocks here. Extremely excited about that. My business partner, Dr. Sumner, she has put a lot of time and effort and creativity into creating these games that goes into the escape room. I know that for myself, I've done a couple escape rooms. I'm okay. It's not so much my thing. I guess if you relied on me, I would probably end up being stuck in there, or my folks that are with me, they'd probably end up being stuck with me. So she has put a lot of work into this. So you guys be on the lookout. We're expecting this to open in about maybe 3 weeks or so. It's going to be early August, and we're extremely excited about it because I know she has she's put her thinking cap on, and she's got some really cool puzzles and stuff in there for you guys to solve. So stay on the lookout for that, and we'll have all the information and how you can go in and book those times and everything. So just stay tuned to the website, Facebook page, and we'll also make sure we announce it here on the Ghost Biker page. So a couple other things. I am still filming for season 5, which will release the first week in October. It'll be the first Tuesday night in October. I'm really excited about that. Going to be filming tomorrow night at a really cool location. I don't know that I'll be able to go live because I don't know what the situation with the Wi-Fi and such is like. So probably won't be able to do that, but we're going to be filming, working on editing. That's coming up, as well as several different Ghost Biker events. So I want to go ahead and get to tonight's guest. We'll cover a few more things that's going on at the end of the show, but since we got a lot to talk about, I want to make sure to go ahead and get to him. So let me go ahead and get this pulled up over here. So my guest tonight, most of you guys know him, but in case you don't, it's Mr. Steve Dills from Transcend Paranormal. He is a wonderful investigator. And if you're looking for solid, good investigating, Steve and his team, they're ones you really need to check out their stuff and look into, because they're fantastic investigators. He founded Transcend Paranormal in 2010, and he's currently their team director. He's the historian with the Ghost Finders, and dude's got a degree in computer science, which works out great and helps him in navigating the high tech gadgetry that's used on the show. He's also the co-founder and co-founder of the nonprofit Fleetwood ParaCon, and he partners with some of the most prominent investigators in the country. I had the opportunity to meet Steve back when we were speaking last year at St. Albans Sanatorium, and we were able to work together again this year at the ParaCon there at St. Albans. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Steve on, and we're going to get started. Hey, Steve.
Hey, how's it going?
Going great. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. I'm worried. You're like, everybody knows him. I'm like, oh God, this is bad. This is bad.
How do they not know Steve? Come on now.
Oh my goodness.
But in case they don't, why don't you go ahead and tell us how you got started and tell us everything you're involved in right now.
Sure. Oh, hi, Tom. Tom's a good friend of mine. Tom's a chat. Yeah. So I got into the paranormal when I was really young. My first interactions started in a home that we lived in, and it was actually I was raised up north in a mix of Jersey, so some Jersey and some Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia, and so that's where I kind of grew up, and then um, we abruptly had to move down to Virginia. My dad had a job opportunity that really couldn't pass up, but the catch was we had to move fast. So came down to Virginia, um, and we moved into this brand new built house. Like nobody had lived in it before. And so a lot of people are like, "Oh, new houses, nobody's lived there before." Totally no activity. Um, you couldn't be more wrong. Like this was first off, it was a super weird house. The layout was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Um, and like day one of moving in there, it was weird. um I started off, and keep in mind I was in elementary school, so I was pretty young, and I was nervous, I was anxious. I mean, just as anybody would be moving to a new place, even as an adult you probably feel the same way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was, lots of anxiety, I was very nervous. I got sick for quite some time, a number of months, and a lot of that could be because of like where I mentally was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but on top of that, I feel like if you are in that state of mind and you walk into a location that is active, you are like walking in with a target on your back, and it's like, hey, everybody, pick on that guy right there. Um, so immediately, I was having like hearing my bedroom door open and close at night, the closet doors open and close. Um, I was hearing my name being whispered and yelled into my ear in the middle of the night. Um, I would see shadow figures moving in, like walking into the room, kind of deal. And I mean, it was just wild. I'd hear the piano playing. Um, and so one of the most like significant things that really creeped me out the most probably was the doppelgangers.
Oh.
Um, and it was weird because when you say doppelganger, a lot of people are like, "Oh, like you're seeing yourself or somebody else." It was our family dog, which is the weirdest thing. And so I very clearly remember being out playing in the front yard, and our family dog, which was a Sheltie Collie, so a fairly big dog, um, walked around the corner like and walked into the front yard. And we were living in a neighborhood, like a big neighborhood. There was a lot of people in there, a lot of traffic, and so it was totally not safe for him to be walking without a leash. And so I'm like, all right, you got to go inside. Like, go ahead, get inside. And so he walked around the house and he went into the garage, which led into the basement.
Oh.
And little me was like, all right, that's fine. And then little Steve was like, wait a minute, he can't open doors. Maybe we should go and make sure he can actually get in the house. So I went in to let him in, and he was not there. Like the door was closed. There's no way he would have gotten into the house unless somebody let him in. So I went in and I went up to the living room, and the dog is sitting on my mom's lap. Like his head is laying on her lap. And I remember telling my mom, I was like, that was really fast. Like he fell asleep almost instantly. And she's like, no, he's been sitting here for almost an hour. And she was watching some horrible daytime television. Um, Sorry, mom. But it was things like that, and I'd see that pretty frequently inside the house, outside of the house. Um, and it scared the ever living hell out of me.
Mhm.
And so like there's one point where I like moved out of my bedroom and into the guest bedroom, which was closer, like the next bedroom over to my parents' house, or my parents' room,
Mhm.
because like obviously if I was closer to my parents, there's less of a distance I have to run in the middle of the night when I'm scared, to hell. So
Yeah.
so like I stopped sleeping in my own bedroom. I refused to go in there. um but I hated it, man. I hated it. We lived there for 2 years, and it was a nightmare. And so, like, kind of like not only propelled my interest in the paranormal, but also my hope that I could kind of like help people,
Mhm.
um, so that they don't feel like going home. Like a lot of kids hate school, right? Like you don't want to go to school, right? I
Mhm.
did not want to leave school. I was like, I'm good right here. Like
Wow.
I know when I get on the bus and I get off, I'm gonna be home and I'm gonna be in this house again. Um, and so I don't think anybody should feel that way. Like that sucks. That's not fun. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of like my thought is like maybe I can use my battle scars and my history to help other people get through their own experiences, so they don't feel like they can't be at home in their safe haven from the world. So that's kind of what got me into it, and then just kind of my interests and passion kind of grew more and more and more, and dived really heavily into the history and some into the science and the metaphysical. And I've just been having a blast. It's really fun. I've met some really, really cool, phenomenal folks like you, Miranda. Uh, and so it's been awesome, man. I've had a lot of fun doing it. So.
Well, I mean, what a great reason, to start your journey there, but I can only imagine how scary it would have been for a child. Did your parents experience any of that or anyone else in the household?
My dad did not. He didn't have anything that was like interacting with him. He would see things like we had this attic, right? And we had this rocking chair up in the attic. Like, first off, you should never put a rocking chair in the attic because it's creepy. Um, and just from the creep factor alone. But second of all, every so often when we leave the house and come back home, this rocking chair would be pushed up in the front window of like there were these two little like two tiny windows, you know what I'm talking about, like
Mhm.
on the roof.
Yeah, like on
um
the
yeah,
eve,
I'm talking
yeah.
about. And so the light would be on in the attic and this rocking chair would be sitting in front of the window, like somebody had pushed it up there
Mm.
to like sit there and watch, like to like creep at all the neighbors. um and like there was no AC up in the attic. It was an unfinished attic. It's not like anybody would be like, like, you know what? I really want to go and hang out in the heat. That is exactly what I want to do. And so like, we'd come home to find that and the lights would be on and this rocking chair and all that creepy stuff. Um, we'd have lights like not flicker but turn on and off nonstop. Mostly in the attic and then our front porch and like the front of the house. So much so that our neighbors would call us, like we'd be sitting there eating dinner and one of our neighbors across the street, um, they'd call and be like, "What are you guys trying to do? Like put on a rave or something?" Because
Wow.
like like the front the lights on like the front door, they would be turning on and off like really fast, like somebody was like sitting there like
Wow.
nonstop. Um, so he kind of experienced that.
Okay.
Not much else in terms of the paranormal. Hold on one second. What do you got ice cream? Do you want to say hi to everybody? This is my daughter Coraline. All right. No, no, no. I need you to go. You need to take the ice cream downstairs. You should not be up here with ice cream, lady. Oh my goodness. Um. So he would have that. My mom, on the other hand, would experience this woman that she um would only see from the backside. Oh, thank you. Um, and she was always like dressed in like gray, um, like Civil War kind of style dress, right?
Okay.
And um, she would always see her like leaving the room. Sorry. Um, and so my mom would have this happen, and my aunts and my grandmother would have that happen. But that was about it. Like they didn't experience um seeing these doppelgangers. They didn't experience um the sickness, anything like that. Now they did get like um one of my aunts was pushed down the steps one time,
Wow.
and that was really really interesting. And so she refused to come back to Virginia. She's like, I'm done with Virginia. um, and then one of our other family friends that came um, down front to Virginia, um, we had yes, my daughter is crazy. She runs around in here, and she loves every time I'm like on like live streaming or something. She like has this innate like it's like she could be like in the next house over, by the way, and she'll be like she won't even like I won't even say like, hey, daddy's gonna go stream. She would just like she'd be like, and then she runs and she knows, and it's weird. So it's weird how she knows, man. And so she like typically she'd like to sit in my lap. But she's eating ice cream right now, which means that it's going to get all over the desk and all over me, and it's all over her already. So, um, and we're very far from the kitchen. so, uh, so anyways, we woke up one night to the fire alarms all going off in the house, and there was no fire. However, one of the our family friends that was down, she went like to go and get out of the house, so she got up from the guest bedroom, and I was evicted that particular night from the guest bedroom so that she could stay in the guest bedroom, um, and tried to go down the steps, like to go downstairs to get out of the house. And she was as like she said that it felt like somebody was holding her, like stopping her from going down the steps. She couldn't get down to go into the hallway to get out of the house. And so it wasn't until like my mom and dad got out of bed and came to also obviously get us out of the house. And when we finally all got there, she could finally go down the steps. Yes, I
Wow.
do. There's lots of activity behind the left. There's- Luckily, right now there is nothing going on over on that side of the room, but typically there's a whole lot of things going on over there that nobody ever sees.
So when you all left, did the activity stop at that point? I mean, did it seem to be kind of from the land, or did it seem like there was something going on that, I guess maybe you being young and some of the stuff you were dealing with that sort of brought that on?
So when we moved, it stopped.
Okay.
Nothing. I mean, there were some weird things happening at the new house too, but I don't think it was tied to that. And
Okay.
it was years later. Um, so it pretty much just ceased, which was great. I was a okay with that. Um, I don't know if the activity continues today. Um, Definitely did not like this sounds horrible. We totally did not tell like the new buyers like, hey, by the way, you're gonna be scared shitless living here. No, it didn't say that. So I don't know if it's active today. I have driven past it a couple of times and I look at it glaringly. And I'm like, I don't want to go in there.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't know. I have totally thought about like maybe walking up to the doorstep and be like, "Hey, listen, do you guys ever have any ghosts?" But I also feel like at the same time they might consider me like some sort of drug addict.
Right.
So like I was like, maybe this is not a good idea.
Well, and it's different too whenever it's your own home. And I would imagine when you're so young. And I mean, because now obviously we've got an interest in it. And it's like
Mhm.
whenever someone says, hey, I've got this activity going on, it's like, okay, I want to go check it out. But it's obviously very different when it's your own home and when it's
Oh
your own
yeah.
childhood that's involved.
Oh yeah. I mean, like St. Albans. Like, oh my God, the amount of crazy stuff at St. Albans. Um, and I mean, hell, I was surprised you walked around by yourself there for so long. I was like, oh my God.
I
Um,
did.
we're like, has anybody seen Miranda? And she's like, you're like, oh yeah, she went that way. And I
You
was like,
found
oh,
me by my live stream, I think.
I did find you. I hunted you down. I was like, where's Miranda? We gotta find Miranda. And so I hopped on your live stream and found you, hunted you down.
Yeah.
Um,
'Cause
but
I was lost. If you had asked me where I was, I felt like I had got into some kinda time warp or something because I felt like I was just walking around in a circle, and I would take these different staircases, and then all of a sudden I would end up in
End up in the same
alcoholics.
space. Yes.
Yeah,
I tell you what, every time, if you just start wandering, you'll end up in very specific places in that building, which is very weird.
it
Um,
is.
but like St. Albans in like insane asylum, right? Lots of activity. I'm like, yes, sign me up, I'll go. My childhood home, I'm like, I don't know about that one. You know what I mean? Like it's just weird. It was really weird. It was a lot of very personal stuff.
Mhm.
Um, Now, if somebody did give me the opportunity, I'd probably be like, "This is weird," but yes, I'm in.
Mhm.
Um, but I definitely have to think about it for a hot second. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's a lot more personal, right? Like I can't imagine like if you brought somebody that actually was admitted to St. Albans into St. Albans, it would be a much more intense experience than like
Mhm.
you or me that are going just to investigate and research. But as far as I know, you were not there when it was open, and I
No.
was not there when it was open. Um, so it's just I think it's different, especially when you have that personal attachment to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost kind of like in a way, not so much confronting your own demons, but confronting, your own ghosts essentially.
Hmm.
And it is personal because I would imagine, being woke up in the middle of the night, seeing some of these things, knowing that someone's watching you. I mean, that's extremely personal. It's in your own home space. I mean, we get that here at the jail. We don't have a lot of locals that come. I mean, most of the people that come here aren't from here. And somebody actually kind of really nailed it when we were talking one day, and they said, we do have former inmates that do come in here and they do talk about some different things. But when we've had jailers that have experienced shadow figures and dispatch that's experienced stuff in the elevator, when they do come back, they're quite uncomfortable and nervous about it. And then also, one guy was saying, folks may not want to come in because they had their experience and they really just don't want to relive that. So it
Oh
is
yeah,
totally different whenever you've been in there.
I'm sure, man. I mean, it's just like anything in life when you have an experience that is really I mean very strong. It's hard to go back and look at it, and that's the thing that I like is I don't mind talking about it. I feel like there's opportunity for growth
Hmm.
and for not only me but then sharing my own story and experiences others can kind of process their own,
Yeah.
which is really cool, and I don't mind that at all. Um, but going back would be totally different like for me than if I brought a friend to also investigate it with me.
Right.
And also, like, if there's no activity going on there right now, I would not want to like go in there and like stir the pot. You know what I mean? Like, and be like,
You
"Hey,
might bring something back. It may be like,
yeah,
he's here.
he's back, get him." Um, and then like those poor folks living there now. So, I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, okay, so after that, you kind of were doing some solo investigating and stuff. Did you tend to do more of the residentials, since you were kind of using that as a way to help other people? Did you do more residentials when you were doing solo?
When I first started, I was part of a group called the Richmond Paranormal Society, and it was here in Richmond, Virginia. And that's where I went to college, and so it just worked, right?
Hmm.
Um, at the time that I joined that group, and this was like a meetup group. It's not like a team or
Okay,
anything. Um, there were 30,000 people, somewhere around that. It was ridiculous. It's a lot of folks, right?
few
And
people.
so, yeah, just a couple. And so what would happen is, I realized that like I was still fairly inexperienced. Like I had a lot of activity and I had experienced a lot of activity, but I didn't really confront that activity,
Gotcha.
and confront those experiences. So the first thing that I wanted to do was just get out there and kind of get my feet wet. So I joined this big group, and they would do this thing where if they would, um, one of the local theaters in Richmond called the Bird Theater, you could go and investigate it, right?
Okay.
And they'd only allow like 10 people at a time, and you had to pay and all the normal things.
Hmm.
Um, but that is 10 people out of 30,000. And so they would post on like the Facebook group like, "Hey, we're going to do this. It's going to be, $20 a person or whatever. The first 10 people to respond are in." And so I worked in IT,
Wow.
and I was always on my computer, and I'm also a nerd. So like it all kind of worked out that I was always there, and so I could sign up pretty quick. Um, so I did a few of those, and the first thing that I realized that was like it was always a grab bag of who I was investigating with. Um, there were a couple of folks that were kind of organizing the investigations or events or whatever you want to call them at that point. And so I'd see one of those folks, and that was, pretty normal. But then, like, the other 9 people or so that I was investigating with were like, typically I didn't know who they were at all. Like, sometimes I'd see one familiar face, sometimes I didn't. And so, like, I realized very quickly that it is very awkward to be stuck in what was that? Was that
I don't know
humidity?
what that was.
Tainted. Tainted. Uh, I'm dead.
So you heard
Like,
that?
oh yeah, I'm totally tuned in to your audio, and you were like, I knew you were at the jail, and so I was like, I bet you.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, always.
so it was hard because like I'm in this location locked in the dark with 9 people, and I don't know any of them.
Mm.
And so like
That's
that
scary in of itself.
yeah, it's rough, and Tom heard it too. And and so did Steve. Hello, other Steve. Hello, fellow Steve. And so I remember the very first investigation I did um, was at the theater, and one of the guys rolled in, and I was partnered up with him for the evening and one other person, and we get to where we're going to investigate. We're going to go backstage. We're going to go to the basement and start investigating. And he's like walking with us, and he's like, "Oh, by the way, um, I thought this started at 8 o'clock, not 10 o'clock. So I went to the bar, um, and he's like, I'm really drunk right now. So if I say anything or hear anything or see anything, don't believe me." And I'm like, oh my god, like this is horrible. Like now I've got to babysit this guy, like and I mean, like, he is asking some really awful he starts singing at one point, and and he's like, "Ghosts, finish the song for me," and I'm like, "Oh my dear lord." And I'm just like, if anybody sees that this dude is, like, straight up drunk, like, wasted, um, I mean, I don't know. I was going crazy. And so like I
God.
realized very quickly like I cannot do this. I cannot do this. And so like I met a couple of folks luckily that were kind of like minded. Like we need some folks that we get along, we can
Mhm,
trust. We're not gonna be like drunk on an investigation. And we can work together, right? So um, we ended up forming Transcend Paranormal kind of like unofficially in like 2008, 2007, 2008.
mhm,
And we kind of just did our thing. We would go to like battlefields. We'd start like outside places that we could get access to without, middle of the day. I mean, a lot of people think that like you have to investigate at night. You don't.
mhm,
You can investigate at any point in the day. Um, and so we would start there, right? And then after that, we, started kind of getting our feet wet at historic locations that we could like rent out. After that, we decided like, okay, we feel like we have enough under our belt that maybe we can start helping people. We didn't immediately go into this like, all right, we want to help people, we want to get into people's houses because you can
mhm.
do a lot of damage
Yes.
just going into somebody's house. Like it's you know I think that was at your place too. Oh my god.
Yeah.
You don't have like a cat? You don't have like a cat running around there or
I do
anything?
have a cat, but she's laying back here asleep.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Um,
Sometimes it sounds like there's people fighting upstairs, sometimes you can hear cell doors. It's wild sometimes.
you gotta go break it up. Be like,
Yeah,
"Stop! Stop!"
exactly.
But, I like the saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and I think that that is very true when you have people going in trying to help people in their homes and their residences,
Mhm,
and they're like, they might be inexperienced, and it's hard to say what is experience versus inexperience because there is no professional degree or anything in the paranormal, but I feel like there are certain gotchas that you should know, like,
sure.
if you're gonna walk into somebody's house and say, "Oh, it's demonic," hey, I'm gonna go home. I'll see you later. I'm gonna go back to my house, and you're gonna stay here. Like that
Mhm,
does more harm than good, and that is very inappropriate, I think. Um,
yes.
and so we wanted to kind of get our bearings straight before we went in to start helping people. And so, after kind of hitting some of these locations up, and just like different, like small places, small businesses, and all those sorts of things, then we started kind of putting ourselves out there to help going into client cases. And we don't, I mean, it's not like we have them like every weekend. It's not
Hmm.
a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that because we've gotten into some really hairy um cases where like people are either doing drugs, and like
Yeah.
you do not want to be caught in the middle of that, or you get into some cases where there's definitely some mental um issues. And I'm not saying like issues like I'm saying like issues like anxiety, depression,
Hmm.
those sorts of things that people are aware they have. And when you start mixing in the paranormal with that, if there is no activity but you start feeding into their belief that there is activity, you they could hurt themselves and you are liable,
Hmm.
at least in the state of Virginia. And
Okay.
so it's hard because you want to walk that fine line of helping people, but you need to protect yourself at the same time. Um,
Hmm.
and so that's why we have a pretty rigorous, like, if you want help from our team, it's a fairly rigorous process now. It used to be like, hey, whatever, but now it's like, we have forms that you have to fill out,
Hmm.
waivers. We've got a number of interviews. We don't just like roll up. Like there's actual interviews and all that sort of stuff. Um, and we go through a fairly serious process before we get to your house. Um,
Hmm.
and even once we get to your house, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to investigate. We're going to go and interview you first.
Yeah.
Um, there was one guy that was like, it was horrible. He was like, "We're seeing things, we're hearing things, it's crazy," and I'm like, "All right, well, we'd like a tour of the property," and he's like, "Okay, well, let's go." And so we got a tour of the house. Everything was great. He's like, and I sit out on the deck and I see things in the woods all the time. And we're like, well, can we walk through the woods? And he's like, well, yeah, let's go. I'll take you on the path. And we get out on this path, and he's growing marijuana
Oh my
in these giant pots. And like, I'm like, I'm like, hey, no harm, no foul, whatever. You do you, bro. Um, but like, I'm not trying to get arrested. Like,
God. Plausible deniability there.
yeah, like I'm not trying to get arrested. So I was just like, I'm sorry, we can't take this case on. Reflection of the paranormal, a lot of people don't realize we all can use it. Yes, yes, you can.
Yeah.
You totally can. And you have to be super, super careful about that. You have to, like Carl says, you got to cover your butt, man.
Yeah.
Um, you don't want to go out there with best intentions and help, wanting to help people, and you get into a situation where like you're dealing with something like that, and the next thing you know, you're the police, and guess what? You're gonna go and see some new friends at the Scott County Jail.
That's right. Well, it's interesting because, I've talked to a lot of different people that residentials are their thing. And, when I first started and I was part of a team, we did a mix. We were investigating somewhere usually every couple weeks. We did a
Mhm,
couple investigations a month, mostly commercial, but we did a lot of residential being down in the Chattanooga area. You've got a lot of the same with Virginia. You've got a
mhm.
lot of the battlefields and different types of activity that's going on in a lot of these houses. But residentials were never really one of my favorite things because I mean, yes, it's great to help people if on the off chance you take a case on and you're able to help or debunk something or give a logical explanation. But a lot of the time, what a lot of people don't realize is that to do a true residential, I mean, you become this lifeline and it becomes something that can be year long or multi-year long cases of going back and forth, and
I've,
that's a
I've, s-
lot.
I've
People
s-
calling you in the middle of the night, and
have you read Steve's comment yet?
I have not. Let's see.
You started talking, and I'm listening to you, and then I read that, and I'm like dying. I'm like, oh my god.
See? You never know when it's a 300-pound
Oh
black
my
pig or if it's
god. It's a
but
demon.
but truly though, a lot of people don't realize when it comes to, these residential cases, they're just a whole different beast when it
Oh
comes.
yeah. I mean, thank you, Cedar. You make me blush. Um, but you like you said, you become a lifeline. Like
Yeah.
like when I'm doing residential cases, I make sure I'm available I mean, like,
Mhm.
I have to work in the middle of the day, but I've got my phone available. If if you have something in the middle of the night, call me, and
Mhm.
we'll come out and help you. And it's not like a one and done thing, like you said.
No.
Like, you can be there for a while. I mean, I don't know. I've never walked into a location and just started kick off an EVP session, and I'm like, all right, I know everything that's here. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Like, you just don't. like I've been to St. Albans, and like I've been up there, and it's active and it's ridiculously crazy, but I've been there nights where we've got nothing.
Mhm.
And like absolutely nothing. It's just like the weather. Um and so like it's a lot of people don't realize it. It's not like it's not for fun.
Right.
It's not for fun. It's not for you, it's for them.
Mhm.
And you really have to do your due diligence so that you are not harming them more than you are helping them. Um
Exactly.
and that's very difficult. It is incredibly difficult to make sure that you are helping these people because it can be a double-edged sword.
Mhm.
It's like when you go and talk to a toddler, right? And like,
Yeah.
the more you interact with the toddler, the more the toddler's gonna interact with you. I really think that's the same thing with a lot of residential cases where like if there's something there and they're ignoring it, but every so often something happens, just leave it. Just leave it. We're
Mhm.
good. You're good. If you go in there and you're like, hey, by the way, we can hear you now. And we want you to do these things. We want you to interact. That's like, opening your front door and just saying, let's go. Come on, everybody. Party bus.
I mean, that's a good way to explain to describe that, and that's why for me, I mean, I don't being a solo investigator, I'm very, very rarely do I do any residentials because one, I get a lot of different interesting calls, and then two, the couple residential cases that I did, I never film them as part of my show. Now I'll film them for my own purpose to go back, but
Yes.
I don't use them as episodes because it's different because you're there for a different purpose. And a lot of people, several people that I've called, they were kind of upset, after they had reached out to me, and it's like, I'll look into it, but it's not going to be an episode, that
Yeah.
the
I mean,
opinion changed.
I had one um case years back where um we showed up, and this was before we did a really extensive interview process. It's a huge live and learn. And
Mhm.
Tom, you're absolutely correct. And Carl, you are spot on, man.
Yeah.
But we rolled up there to investigate. We get into the house, and it's this woman who's sitting there at the kitchen counter or at the kitchen table. She opens the door. She's like, "Come on in, everybody." She goes and sits down, and she's got three other women from the neighborhood there, and they're all drinking wine. And they're like, "Okay, when is the camera crew going to arrive?" And I'm like, "Camera crew?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, isn't this going to be on TV?" And I'm like, "No, like, where did you ever get this?" Um, and so it's hard because it's like, do these people like what is the expectation here? And I'm a big believer of like I've seen where teams have live streamed private investigations
Mhm.
at private residences. That is horrible on a multitude of reasons. And the majority of them all lie within the safety of the client. And
Mhm.
like, if some, like, God forbid, anybody's like, I know exactly who that house is, or I know where that is. And now you also know what they have in their house, where the rooms are, how to get in and out of the house. Like, all of this, all the layout and everything.
And
Uh,
you've just showed it to them.
and yeah, you've just live streamed everything, and you're like, here's the house. Congratulations, everybody. Uh, Yes, Tim, I've had that happen, and it was weird, man. It was weird. It was a weird thing to get out of and just be like, "Hey, we're done." Um,
But you have to do that. You really do.
yeah.
And sometimes it is an awkward situation. So, like I said, for me, it's residentials are just something I have helped on some. I have done some since I became solo, but for the most part, I like to focus on those local legends, the history aspect of things, and really trying to come up with evidence that's supported or validated through the
Hmm.
history. And I know that that's the role that you play with Ghost Finders, correct? Is historian?
Yeah. So I actually joined the Ghost Finders on season 11. So the current season,
Mhm.
and hopefully more. I love you, Rob. And so and Heather. And so um, I met them. I actually brought them to the Fleetwood ParaCon, and we just kind of hung out, started talking, and hit it off. And so um, they reached out to me when they were going to Sweet Springs Sanatorium,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
amazing, by the way. If you haven't been to Sweet Springs,
I've not been. That's one place
you
I'd like
need
to
to
get to.
you need to go to Sweet Springs.
That's,
Like,
Cindy Harper, isn't it?
yes,
Yeah.
oh my god, that place is cool. And so Rob calls me and he's like, "Hey, do you want to come? Uh, and we're gonna film an episode at Sweet Spring Sanatorium. Aren't you close to that? Um, like it's nearby to you." And I was like, sort of. It's in West Virginia." I was like, "I'm in Virginia, West Virginia being its own separate state, but yes, I'm fairly close, Rob." And so, honestly, I was actually really close. It's like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, or something like that. So I was like, "Hell yeah." And so I was like, okay, well, what do you need me to do? I was like, I can grill things, or I can make Tom grill things. Tom was at Spirit Springs with us last time, and Tom didn't realize it, but all of a sudden, Tom and one of our team members, Sheena, ended up grilling for us. Um, but I was like, "Do you need me to carry the camera? Do you need me to carry lights? Like, what do you want me to do?" And he's like, "I want you in front of the camera." And I was like, "Oh my god." Because that's weird. Like, I know you're like super used to it by now, but for me, it's still kind of weird, right? Um, and so, I just when they asked me to come to Sweet Springs, I was like, this is awesome. So like, I dived heavy into the history. Like, that's what I like to do. I like to go straight for the history. And I truly believe that you need to have historical context
Mhm.
for a location, not necessarily just the building, but the property, the land, the people, maybe some of the furnishings and
Hey guys,
objects.
this is Steve Dills
Oops,
from
Um,
sorry.
Ghost Finders.
no, you're fine.
That
There's
was not
there's
supposed to play the audio.
there's high pitched Steve. And so um I dived into all that, and so when I got there, I was like, "All right, here's all here's everything that I found." And of course, Rob, being a medium, he was like, "I
Mhm.
don't want to see any of it. Don't show it to me." And I was like, "Oh my god," I was like, "Oh my god, did I screw up?" But no. So like, the rest of the team checked it out and everything. They were pretty impressed.
Mhm.
Um, so it was great. Like, it was super cool. I was able to use a lot of what I had found, and I was able to meet Ashby, the owner, and Ashby and Cindy and I ended up talking for like 4 hours, which was really cool. And I got to learn a lot about the history and really like fall in love with this place. Um, and just kind of clicked. Like, Rob reached out to me after that and was like, "Hey, we're gonna go up to the Peter Oliver House, in Massachusetts." And I was like, "How do I make this happen?" So after that, they invited me on to be a full time cast member, and so we did that. We did another location that I can't quite talk about yet. But we also did Henricus Historical Park, which is where I'm going to be this weekend, on Saturday. But coincidentally, is also the day, and this was totally not planned, but it's also the day that we're releasing the Henricus Historical Park episode for the Ghost Finders, which was awesome because it's like Henricus is one of these places that is a home base for me. It's like we've investigated it, time and time again, and I find a lot of value in that. I love doing that.
Mhm.
Um, we've investigated it for almost a decade now, if not over a
Wow.
decade. Um, and so it's been great because we're able to get, really, really nice data and baselines
Mhm.
and um, really pull things together. I feel like when you visit a place one time, that's great and that's awesome, but you really don't get to truly experience it and get to, kind of piece that puzzle together at all. Um,
Exactly.
so it's a really unique opportunity, and this because you've got the
Mhm.
jail, that
Mhm.
you get to go and investigate it all the time, and you get to become familiar with the activity, and you can start pinpointing things. Um,
Exactly. True
and
research, it feels
yeah,
like.
exactly, right.
Mhm.
And that's what I really like to do. I love to be able to pinpoint, like at the Hanover Tavern, or another location that I'm
Mhm.
actually the president of. Um, we're able, same deal. We've been investigating that location for almost 10 years now. And just recently, we were able to finally piece together some of the evidence that we and stories that people had shared from living there, from visiting there, from being a guest, from dining there, um, to our own experiences, and actually say we think we have a really good idea as to what this experience is. You know, one of the things that we have is the lady in black. Everybody's got a lady. Um,
Very
some
true.
and some color, right? And so our lady in black, and I know we can go back to Ghost Finders. I'm totally like tangent running right now.
No, you're
Um,
fine, you're fine. I definitely want to go back to Ghost Finders, and you can tell people where they can watch it, but we'll definitely go back there here in a second.
So, so this is the Hanover Tavern. The building. This current building is actually two structures. The first, which is on the left hand side, between those two chimney stacks, is considered the home of the tavern owners, and that was built in 1791. And the second section on the right, between the other two right chimney, the two chimney stacks on the right hand side, is what is called the quote unquote new tavern, and that was built in 1821. The building was connected to be one big building, or Frankenstein, as I like to call it, in 1831. Now, the original tavern that stood on that property, we know that there was a tavern that, well, there was a license starting at 1733.
Wow.
And we know that in the 1750s, there was a tavern there. Um, so we know that we've got quite a bit of history.
Mhm.
And one of the stories that I was told, and really what my team was brought in, and that's how I we found the tavern and fell in love with it, and ended up being the board president. Weirdly enough, um, was the lady in black. And so guests would see her walking through the home portion of the tavern in a black mourning gown, not like time of day, mourning like you're mourning the loss of somebody.
Mhm.
And it was in a Victorian era gown. So we kind of have a timeline, right? We know that it's probably like 18. 60s, 18 late 1860s, 1870s kind of time period, right? And through our history just deep dive, we know that there was a tavern owner there at the time. She had lost two of her daughters, and one of those daughters or had two children that the tavern owners ended up taking under their wing, their grandchildren,
Wow.
right?
Mhm.
And so we think we have a fairly good idea of who this is, and we've been able to utilize, EVP sessions to get answers that kind of relate around it. We brought in some psychics that I really trust, the Connor sisters, or the Sisterhood
Yeah,
of Magic
yeah.
and Wonders. Um, they came, and oh, okay, sorry.
No, you're fine.
They came, and without knowing the history, they immediately brought that up, which was really, really cool. Um,
They're fantastic, by the
oh,
way.
well, they're crazy.
I know,
Girls are crazy.
so much fun, and not to interrupt, but, I
No,
got to meet them for the first time there at St. Albans, and they just have this energy to them, and, both
they're
times,
fantastic.
and it's so consistent, and they're just there's there's something about them. I mean, they know their stuff.
They're really good, and I'll tell you,
Yeah.
you can be in the worst of moods and like go and listen to some of the crazy stories, and oh my god, you'd be laughing in like 10 seconds. They're great. They're great people. um but yeah, so they were able to pick it up. We've had other people come in and pick that up, and it was just really cool to be able to really like put a piece together,
Mhm.
um and like find something that ties it all. So it was really cool. It is really cool opportunity to do that. So
Nice. Well, so I want to jump back to a second for a second there to because we do have some questions over here, but I
mhm,
want to jump back to Ghost Finders, what you were talking
sure.
about. Where can people watch those past episodes if they've not seen them, and then the upcoming episodes?
Yeah, so season 11, and I think 9 and 10 are on Paraflix.
Okay.
So if you head over to Paraflix, that is where all of that and a bunch of awesome, really cool other shows and movies and documentaries are. And if you use, oh god, I don't know what the code is. they're gonna kill me. I think it's Ghost Finders 25. I think. Don't. Oh, it is. It is. It's the Ghost Finders 25. Big brain moment. You can get 25% off your annual subscription. So if you decide to go that way, definitely use. I think that's the best one that I found. Um,
Okay.
and Natalie can correct me if I'm wrong, Natalie Jones. But the Ghost Finders 25% off, or it's the Ghost Finders 25, and you get 25% off. And I know I used that one for my subscription, so uh, so that's where you can find. I think it's season 9, 10, and 11. I think on the Spirit Network, on Roku, I think there are a few seasons. Apple TV and then Prime Video, I think, has some of the earlier seasons. I don't remember, and I don't have a Roku to confirm Spirit Network, unfortunately. I've got
Gotcha.
I've got nonstop Fire TVs everywhere in my house, so
And so
Amazon
the
has us on lockdown.
so the new one that's coming out that you said is getting ready to premiere is the best
Mhm.
place Paraflix for that.
Yes, yep, that will be
Okay.
exclusively on Parafix, and that is Henricus Historical Park. And Henricus is really cool. It's got well over 400 years of history, dating back, 1611, when Jamestown was like not a very safe place, and they wanted to, the early English colony wanted to move upriver. They hopped back on their ship, sailed up, and they found the peninsula of Henricus, or Henricus, Henrico Fort. And so that was the second English settlement in America.
Okay.
Jamestown was the very first. Um, and then you had Henricus, and Henricus is where Pocahontas stayed before going to England. So I think it was at Henricus that she may have gotten the name Elizabeth, and she stayed there in what is called Rock Hall. And we actually are going to be investigating not that building, but an exact replica of Rock Hall on Saturday. So I'm super excited about that one.
Very
Um,
cool. Lots of old history there in Virginia.
Dude, it's cool. I love it's great because, like, people are always like, "Have you been all the way over here? Have you been all the way out there? Have you been, to this state or that state?" And I'm like, I really don't have to go anywhere. Like, you don't have to go far. Just like you said, Chattanooga. Like, Chattanooga is
Mhm.
a really cool place. You don't have to go far
Mm-mm.
to run into something. And that's the same thing with Virginia. Like, there's if nothing else, there is Rev War and Civil War, like, everywhere. You can't step foot
Mhm.
without it. So
So
it's pretty
yeah,
cool.
it's the same here in Tennessee. Whether you're in the Chattanooga area or whether you're up here where the jail is, I mean, there are locations within 45 minutes of each other,
Hmm.
and right there in southern Kentucky. But I've always been fascinated there with Virginia because there is just so much. I mean, I don't think there's a spot of Virginia that has no activity.
I don't know. I mean, there are definitely days where there's no activity. I've definitely seen them, but
Well, I'm
man,
sure
by
like
far and
anywhere
large.
else. Let's see here. So we've got a few questions. Let me scroll back just a little bit. I'm looking for the capitalized questions here. I know I saw one early on here from D Hoot. She asks, "Are the posters on the board behind me former wanted posters of former inmates?" Yes, and this booking room here where I'm sitting, pretty much everything is as it was whenever the jail closed down in 2008. And so these stories here on this board, we've done a lot of research on some of these, and there are some fascinating stories. There's a guy on there, not to break into all this during that, but just to answer this question.
Totally
There's a
okay
guy
with it.
on the board. He was one of the first, the TBI, or the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. It was started in 1993. And so we have one guy on there who escaped from Nashville State Penitentiary, who was one of the original folks that was on the list in 93. And so he's actually the only person that was an original that's still on that list today. So interesting story, and we've actually gotten some stuff in the jail talking about some of these wanted posters and some of these missing posters back here. So, yes,
That's pretty
Dehu,
cool.
that, yeah, yeah. And we always tell people, because the spirits that are here inside the jail, they're very aware, they're very intelligent. If you get something that seems a little off, look around you, because we've got a ton of articles, ton of artifacts in here, and they talk about those articles. They'll talk about the artifacts. They'll talk about what you're wearing. And so if something seems a little dark or different, it may just be something that's on the wall
Okay.
around you. So Yeah, kind of interesting there.
Was there any inmates that ever escaped? Did you have any escapes? And I
Two.
only watch it. I'm only asking this because I just watched the Josh Gates episode on Alcatraz.
I
First off, I
love Josh
love Josh
Gates.
Gates. I love it.
He is my favorite. If there's an
Absolute favorite.
inspirational investigator, Josh Gates is my favorite.
100%.
Um, yeah. See, I knew I liked you. Uh, yeah, we actually have had two escapes from here, but they didn't happen inside the jail. Whenever you see what the jail looks like, I mean, it's this big stone. It's
Hmm.
literally a castle, and so it's a fortress. They did close the jail down for a brief period from 1963 into 1971, where they opened another jail. It was closed due to fire marshal and fire code. They had a lot of escapes from there, so they brought the inmates back here. And so, I believe it was in 2001, maybe, they had two inmates from Ohio escape out of the back recreation yard. They ended up going under the fence, and so the terrain here is really rugged and really crazy. And so back behind the building, it just drops off, and then there's New River. It runs back in behind.
So they just found them down there.
Well, they were gone for about 5 hours, and when they found them, they were all dirty and wet, and there's my cat. They were all dirty and wet, and so, they thought they had got a lot further, but turns out they had only gotten a few miles down the road. They said, we crossed 3 rivers and crossed a bunch of hills, but it turns out they had only crossed the same river 3 times. So,
That's awesome.
yeah. So that's been the only escapes that we've actually had from here that we've been able to find record of.
That's crazy.
And they didn't happen from inside. Let's see
That's too
here.
funny though.
Scrolling back down through here. Got a lot of great comments over here. Thank you guys so much. Reflections of the Paranormal says, so what location is your favorite, Steve? And what's the one place you still have on your bucket list?
That's rough. Um, being so tied to history, I like. It's hard to say there's one location that's my favorite.
Hmm.
Um, all of the like everywhere I've been has almost been like a favorite to me for different reasons.
Hmm.
Um, like there's a place that we just filmed at up in Pennsylvania, and I can't disclose where it is, but the activity there made the Ghost Finders team like, and it was rough. Like it was an emotionally challenging filming. It was a weekend long, and it was difficult. Like there was a lot of baggage to unpack on that
Wow.
investigation. And so like it's to say it was like my favorite. um I think it was my favorite in the terms of like what it made everybody face, and it was different.
Hmm.
It was very different than your typical investigation. It was very personal. And so it was really cool. And then, I could go with my canned, responsive. I love, the tavern, like, right, because I'm the board president. So, um, but I've also been investigating there, and I have such a history there. And I'm fairly certain, like, if I were to die, that's probably where I would go, and haunt. You could probably find me there. Um, and so that's my favorite, just for so many reasons. And I just love the building, and I love the energy. I love the people there, and our foundation and our staff. um you know Sweet Spring Sanatorium, I can't get enough of. And just the intensity of that location. Like, I feel like there's a lot of locations that get overdone. And
Hmm.
people kind of go there and they ask the same questions time and time again, over and over and over. And like, it's like you get bored. Like, if if, like, Miranda, if people were like asking you, "Hey, what's your name?" and that's all they did. Like every day, somebody walked in and was like, "How old are you?" And you're like, "You don't even know me. Why am I going to tell you how old I am?" Right? Like, that's weird. That's a weird thing to answer. Um, I feel like a lot of locations get like really overdone, and Sweet Springs, I feel like, is one of those locations that is like a hidden gem. It's massive, and a lot of people haven't been there quite yet, and so the activity there is just ridiculously off the charts. So I would throw those out there, but man, every place I've been to and investigated has like a special place that has like these very particular things that make me love it and want to visit it again. So that's a hard question.
It's a
Uh,
very hard question. Uh,
in terms of bucket list, Hinsdale House. That is one place I really want to
oh
go to.
yeah.
And that's a realistic answer. Unrealistic is the Island of the Dolls, Poveglia Island. I think
Hmm.
is that the Island of the Dolls, or is that
It
the
is. Yeah,
uh
I
um
believe.
no, I think Poveglia was somebody correct me if I'm wrong. It's in Italy, and I think that was the place
Oh,
that was
was it like
the
the asylum type, or
that's where
not asylum, but the where they put the people
they
with the plague?
yes, I exiled people with the plague. And that's my unrealistic uh place that I want to go. Don't think it'll ever happen, but my God, do I want to go there?
Good answers. Great question. Good answers. And then Carl says, Steve, being from the Richmond area, have you checked out Cabin on 360? We were there a couple months ago, and I got an EVP referencing my dog, which I brought with us. If you've ever been, what was your experience?
It's been a really long time since I've been there. I had been there a couple of times. I was friends with um, 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 oh my God,
Oh, the
Ryan.
yeah.
I was friends with Ryan, and so I'd gone out there a few times and hung out with him and investigated a little bit. Um, it's an interesting location. We get, not like a huge amount of activity, and I think over time, I think when you investigate locations, I think there is a point where like the spirits are aware, they want to communicate, they want to, they know that you're there, and the intention that you have is to interact. And so I was there pretty early on, right, where they're,
Mhm.
it was still very fresh, it was still very new. And you'll see that a lot of places. Like the first time you go somewhere, I'm sure, Miranda, you probably don't get the same experience as if you've been there time and time and time.
Exactly.
Like the jail, I'm sure you probably get a lot more activity than most people, right?
Yeah.
And it's a comfort thing, right?
Hmm.
It's building a relationship.
Hmm.
And so we had gotten some things. It's hard to recall because it's been a while. I know, like out back in the woods, we had gotten some EVPs back there, and definitely like sounds of people back there. Um, but I mean, it's an interesting location for sure.
Yeah, I remember Carl talking about going there. That was before they went, and that's one I've wanted to check out because I can't think of the owner's name right now. I know he's also a fellow biker,
Hmm.
and we were kind of talking about some things. I've wanted to check that one out, and I've heard mixed experiences. I've heard from some people it was just continually active, and then others it was a little bit quieter, but um,
I think that's
definitely an
anywhere you
interesting
go.
place. Yeah, yeah,
I
pretty
mean,
much.
it's a roll of the dice, I think, and a lot of people think they're going to go to location and get activity, and that's not always the case. I mean, like I said, I've been to places like Old South Pittsburgh Hospital and
Hmm.
St. Albans, where it was just quiet. It was
Yeah.
just absolutely quiet. Yeah, I mean, nothing was going on. It was like everybody went out of town for the weekend. And then other times where it's just off the chain. And I think that's every location. I don't think it's anything in particular. Like I don't think it's like only happens here and not there. I think it's just a thing, and who's to say it's not something that's tied in science. I know um,
Hmm.
some of my friends at CPRI, the Center for Paranormal Research and Investigation.
Hmm.
They're doing one of my favorite research studies, and that is around the environmental. Um, I guess the data, right? What's going on in the environment when a paranormal or preternatural experience is occurring, right?
Okay.
And what they're finding is they're seeing a spike in barometric pressure
Hmm.
and a spike in ionizing radiation immediately before, during, or immediately after a preternatural or paranormal experience occurs, whether that's an EVP, an AVP, hearing something, seeing something. But they're seeing spikes in barometric pressure and ionizing radiation. And we've seen that
Interesting.
at Hanover Tavern. We've seen that at a number of different locations. That we've investigated. I've gone and helped them with this study. They've done this study at a bunch of different locations, and they're still. I mean, they're still collecting data, right? There's
Did they
there's
do one at Hinsdale?
no. I don't think they've
Oh, they
been.
didn't.
I don't think they've been to Hinsdale yet.
Okay.
I don't know if they are going there. So they actually partner with a local nonprofit that owns a bunch of different historical locations in Virginia, and so they do a lot of their studies there. They do some of
Nice.
the studies at the tavern, and it's just repeatability. One of the big things like Scotchtown,
Mhm.
Patrick Henry Scotchtown, they'll go to Scotchtown, they'll go there time and time and time again, and that's where the research really is, right?
Yeah.
Because over time they've been able to record one of the doors, and it's a very particular and very important door in the house, actually open and close on its own. And they were able to tie that, not only just witnessing the door open and close, but they also see a spike in barometric pressure and ionizing radiation, which is really really cool to me. Like I love
Mhm.
that sort of thing, and so that is what like really dived and pushed me to get a data logger myself, so that I could start looking at that, as well as a
Absolutely.
dosimeter, because I'm like, this is really interesting. So.
See, and I love that because I know, like my EDI Plus box, that's one of my favorite tools
Hmm.
just to be able to watch. And temperature changes are great, but when that humidity and that barometric pressure changes, that's what I start to really pay a lot more attention to,
Yep.
especially if, you know, a flashlight's going off or if a EVP comes through or whatever. It's always interesting whenever it's the barometric pressure that changes. And so I'm fascinated and would love to. Do they have their? Do they put their research out on these different locations?
They do. I don't know where they. I think they just store it straight on their website. It's. Let me
And I'll put that here
see.
in the comments here, just so in case anybody wants to go check that out, because I can totally geek out on that type of. Because before every episode that I do, I always put. I think my cat is about to have a coughing spell. Of course, right here by the microphone.
Right
Um,
next to it.
but I always put the phases of the moon, the temperature inside, the temperature
Hmm.
outside. Try to account for all of the different environmental factors, um, listing it on the different episodes. Ah, there we go. We'll
So I
highlight those.
tossed it in chat. So that is the Center for Paranormal Research and Investigations, and on Facebook, it is. Damn. Um, So I mean, like you said, I find it wildly interesting, man. I love seeing data like that.
Hmm.
Um, and it's not for everybody. Like I think there's more than one way to skin a cat, right?
Sure.
And I'm so sorry, you got like, literally a cat sitting right there. I'm so sorry.
That's all
Um,
right.
but I think that there's a lot of folks like the Connor sisters, right?
Hmm.
That have this gift, right? That they're able to investigate from a metaphysical standpoint,
Hmm.
um, and then you've got your scientific standpoint, and I love melding the two together and trying to
Absolutely.
get like a big picture. Um,
Hmm.
the really neat thing for me is from the science perspective. I am a nerd, and so when I can graph these sorts of things, that's so cool.
Hmm.
It's hard. It is very difficult to do that sort of stuff. I mean, you can, when they're doing this, I will say they have very specific guidelines and focus, and this is what they're going to be focusing on for this particular project. And so it might not be an entire location, like when they've
Hmm.
been to St. Albans to do some data collecting, and they focused on very particular spots. um, they've come to the tavern, and again, instead of doing the entire building, they focused on very specific things, very specific places. And it's interesting because we're able to yield some really cool results from that. And it's not just literally let's fill the building with equipment and gear and all that.
Hmm.
They still do that, but it's very targeted, and so they're using the data loggers, like the EDI Plus, the dosimeters, and I know one of their biggest setups, they had 36 cameras running
Wow.
for their DVR, um, which is really
That's
really. crazy.
insane. Yeah.
We were there for hours setting up
I was
and
gonna ask
hours.
how long were they there to go through all that?
Dude, you know what the great thing is? When you're setting up a DVR, and I'm sure you've seen this, everybody is there, right? Everybody's so down to set up the cameras and run the cables, and then and then and then everybody remembers towards the end of the evening, like, oh, we have to actually break all this down. And so one by one, people are like, I've got to go. I got to let the dog out. I got to get
Mhm.
home. Oh, I have work tomorrow. And then you are stuck with like three people breaking down all of these cameras and feet upon feet of cabling and oh my god. And so it took us a really long time because not only that, but they also set out a mic array, which is super cool. And so they're able, so basically what they'll do, and we've done this ourselves for our team, but this is how they exclusively investigate. They set up all this equipment, they run everything out to like maybe another building or a tent, and then they review all the data as it's coming in. They're watching
Okay.
the location live. They're not in there asking questions, and they're still getting phenomenal results, which is super interesting.
That was gonna
Um,
be my next question. Are they actively investigating while they're doing this, or are they just doing pure just and so they're watching it in the moment, I guess,
mhm.
rather than having to go back
Well, they'll go
and
back. I mean, they'll definitely they don't which is really nice is they're really focused on the scientific method, and so they're not
Mhm.
drawing conclusions live. They're not saying, "Oh, look, like here," right? Now what they'll do is they'll notate things like when they saw the door open and close. Of course, it was like, "Oh my god." Um but they'll jot it down. They jot down, we need to check the EDI because you can't pull a live data from the EDI plus,
Right.
right? And so they'll go back and they'll say, okay, at this moment, this we need to check this right here. We need to check this time. We need to see if there was a spike in whatever we think it is. We think, our theory is stating that we're going to see barometric rise in barometric pressure. We're also going to see a spike in ionizing radiation. And so it's like really cool to see that because they're not in the location, they're not contaminating it.
Mhm.
Because I mean, you get a bunch of people into a room, um, people have their bellies growl all the time,
Mhm.
especially like me. I
Yep.
have this like knack to eat Chinese or not Chinese, Mexican food before investigating,
Oh, no.
right? And like it's just like one of those things where it's like it's not purposeful, it just happens. And that's like I feel like the worst food you could probably eat before going on an investigation. But I still do it, and I'm like, it's like, oh, we're at a Mexican restaurant, let's eat. um and so like everybody makes noises no matter
Yeah,
what.
yeah.
And so to get an EVP, when they're doing this, fully knowing that not a single person was in this building whatsoever, it's really impressive. Especially a change in like temperature, or humidity or barometric pressure, anything like that, where if you open or close a door to the building, you are going to see changes across the
Mhm.
entire building. They're doing this in a closed environment. Nobody's going into that building, and they're seeing some of these things.
How many
Um,
people are on their team?
I don't know. They just actually became a nonprofit, and so
Okay.
they actually have a board now, and they have a slew of folks that help. I'll help and volunteer every so often too when I can, when time allows. But they have a really 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 impressive group of folks. I love it. I love to see that kind
I
of work.
would I would love to, talk to them, have them on the show 'cause, you know, just hearing people talk about that type of research. I mean, it's one thing to go in and ask these questions and use a sort of scientific method and scientific tools when you're doing this, but to actually take the human element out of it.
Completely out of it.
Yeah, that's so fascinating and just such a different side of research that
Oh yeah.
you don't see a whole lot in this.
Because when people say investigating, the idea is that you're going into the location,
What was
right?
that?
I don't know. I just saw that on
Did
your
you see
screen. Yeah, like
that?
right in front of your camera. That was
Yeah,
weird.
that was strange.
Uh,
It
we'll have to go
was like
back.
something ran across or something. It was in front of the screen. That was odd.
That was weird.
Yeah,
Um,
anyways.
but yeah, it's really cool because when people think of investigating, they're like, okay, we're gonna go inside, and it's like they go inside, they just go inside to set up equipment and then they leave, and they're not asking questions, they're not engaging, they're not. The whole intent is to not engage and just
Mhm,
see what occurs.
mhm.
So it's really neat. I mean, I've
Kinda like
seen,
if a tree falls in the woods and
yeah, does
nobody's
anybody
there.
hear it, right?
Yeah.
Now I have seen spikes in barometric pressure and ionizing radiation during an active investigation, in the sense that people were there, people were, interacting and that sort of stuff. But I think it's just as equally, if not more, impressive to see it being done and finding those results when nobody is there to instigate, nobody is there to, like, I guess, have that, like, create that reaction. There is
Mhm.
no, like, action and then reaction. It's just occurring, um,
Mhm.
for
Well,
some
because
reason.
we don't know what we're bringing into a location to sometimes cause this activity, whether it's pulling from our energy or whether it's, something that we've brought in with us. Some of these
Mhm,
very, very negative demonic type locations that have these reputations. I mean, personally, myself, I believe a lot of the time it's our intentions and what we're going in with. But to take that completely out, that really changes a lot. I know, for me, I like to experiment by pre-recording questions,
mhm,
and or having different people either ask the questions that have a connection to the location, and so actively investigating and then going in with a recorder, either asking the same questions or something a little bit different, and seeing if the activity, when I'm completely out of the room or out of the building, even with the recorder going. So I guess that's still a form of active investigating.
mhm.
But
But it's
that's
it's
something.
neat. It's different. I
Yeah.
mean, I do something very similar where, um, we will get a group of people together and all of us ask the exact same question.
Yes, we've been doing that
Um,
here at the jail.
yeah, and I actually learned it from John Tinney, when he was at
Mhm.
the Dunlora, and so I lovingly call it Tinney time, because I don't have a name for it, and so I just call it that because I think it's funny. And so, so, so we do that, and it's really cool to see, like, what you will get. Um, and who's getting an answer, who's getting a
Mhm.
response, because everybody's asking the same question, and nobody is changing it. Like, I'm, like, very specific. I'm like, this
Yeah.
cannot be a game of telephone. I need you to literally say the exact same thing every single
Mhm.
time. And so people, we all ask the same question, and you might get one or two people to get an answer to this particular question being asked, and
Mhm.
it's super interesting. um, One of the cool things that their research is alluding to, and not proven quite yet, but alluding to, is the presence of, the Higgs boson particle. And so if you guys know anything about, more towards, like, quantum physics, quantum mechanics, um, and specifically black holes, um, the idea of the Higgs boson particle is, when, like, a very drastic change in the physics of an environment is occurring, right? A black hole. So it's really cool to kind of theorize the whole idea around, like, why is that there? Why are we? I mean, you're literally seeing ionizing radiation on, like, massive spikes. I'm not talking about a little bit. Like, it's a ridiculous spike. Like, you wouldn't want to be standing
Mhm.
there when that happens. Spike. Um, and that really makes you wonder, like, what are we experiencing, what are we
Mhm.
interacting with, are we, I mean, everybody goes straight to the idea that, um, ghosts are dead folks,
Mhm.
right? But I also feel like that's a slightly selfish thing, because humans, in essence, are very selfish,
Mhm.
beings, right?
Mhm.
um, and so when you toss that out, and you kind of open your ideas to, like, what else could it be, it's really cool to start theorizing the idea. For example, if you love, string theory,
Mhm.
right? The idea that there aren't, four dimensions, or technically we're in three dimensions and one vector, right? X, Y,
Mhm.
and Z in time. Um,
Mhm.
but going with the idea that string theory suggests you could have anywhere between 10 to 22, I think it is,
Wow.
dimensions, right? And I'm not talking about, like dimensions, like, oh, the hell dimension, like, it's not Marvel.
Mhm.
um if I'm talking about dimensions from the sake, like, okay, well, time is a vector for humans, right? Because we
Mhm.
can only experience time in one direction,
Mhm.
forward. If you turn time into a dimension, then, time travel, right? um but who's to say that there aren't other dimensions that we just can't perceive as humans, right? Like, a 5-dimensional cube. We know that's a thing. We're able,
Mhm.
or a 4-dimensional cube, I guess theoretically. You can use computers to create those hypercubes, but it's very hard to imagine in your head. Um, and it's just really cool to theorize all and postulate all around these different ideas. Like maybe it's string theory in the sense that um, we're experiencing or interacting with extra dimensions. Maybe it's a kind of a multiversal thing where there's more than one universe, right? There's a
Mhm.
multiverse, and so maybe it's like marbles in a jar, and we just butted up against one, and it just so happened at that time and space, and that exact moment, we're all of a sudden just getting a glimpse or a window. Kind of view into another universe. And maybe because in the idea of a multiverse, there are infinite amounts, meaning that at every single given second in time, there is another universe created from that. Uh, Maybe they're just 20 years behind, 30 years behind,
Mhm.
100 years behind, 400 years behind. Um, One of my favorite experiences that kind of goes along with that, one of my buddies and teammates, Alan Marston, was up at,
Love Alan.
yeah, he was up at St. Albans,
Mhm.
and he was walking through, and he had a flashlight in his hand, and that was it. And he was walking past the stairwell, and he turned the flashlight and he looked down the stairwell, and standing down there was a what seemed to be a man wearing a pig mask. And this
Oh.
man was walking up the stairs and saw Alan, and Alan says, like, this guy, whoever this was startled. And he's like, I was startled because I'm seeing a man in a pig mask. Um, and so they both stood there and stared at each other for a second. And then the guy in the mask turns around to start running down the stairs. And as he does, he just kind of turns into black mist and disappears. And so, like, the interesting part of that story to me is, like, if we believe that ghosts are these omnipotent things, they're always around us, they're always, they can see what we're doing at all times. Maybe some can, but, like,
Mhm.
if you say that all of them can, then why was this particular one just as scared of Alan as Alan was of it? And the interesting thing is St. Albans does a haunted house.
Mhm.
And so they have
Ah.
people dressing up in costumes very similar to that throughout the entirety of October for years now. And so this wasn't a person that was like, you know, super, like from the 1700s kind of deal. This was like a person like from today. Um, so like it's just really interesting. Like, why was this entity or this individual just as scared of Alan as Alan was of it,
And he
or
may have
him?
very well, been telling this story, if it was a dimensional thing, telling this same story about coming up the steps and seeing somebody that looked like Alan.
This big beefy guy
Yeah.
with a flashlight, and all of a sudden he's like, I was getting ready to go to my haunt, my room, and I see this man, and I'm like, there's not supposed to be any guy here,
Right, was it a
and so
watchman? What was it?
yeah, so he's like, so I turned around and I ran because like nobody's supposed to be like, it's just like so, it's like flip the script, and it's really interesting, right?
So
Um,
what's your personal theory?
I don't know, and that's kind of like the fun behind it. I love the idea that there is this not final frontier, but one of final frontiers that is so unknown that you can kind of throw anything to the wall and see what sticks. I love it, and I think it's super interesting. Um, I do I I've seen and interacting with the Connor sisters and
Mhm.
folks like Kelly Miller, and Pat O'Keefe. Like, I
Yeah.
believe in their skills, right?
Mhm.
Um, so if in that sense of the belief, I think that there probably are some spirits that are hanging out or can come back and communicate and hang out or whatever.
Mhm.
Do I think that's all of it? No, I don't think so. Um, I think that we're probably experiencing a number of different things, um, that all probably tied together in some form or manner. And I think it's just something that either we can't quite comprehend yet, or we might just never be able to comprehend because of our makeup
Mhm.
as humans, and um, being able to only experience the universe in three dimensions in one vector. Like, you can't. It's the same as if you said, if I said, hey, listen, I need you, like if I said, Miranda, I want you to think up of imagine something that's two dimensional, right? You would
Mhm.
think of a line.
Mhm.
Sure, that's two dimensional. um but if I said I want you to think of something that's one dimensional, it's kind of difficult to do that,
Mhm.
because you would immediately think of a dot or a point, but a
Mhm.
dot still has width and height,
Yeah, and when
right?
you zoom in, it's still technically got multiple points to it.
Right? So
Yeah.
you can't actually consider what a one-dimensional thing is. We are only capable of understanding one dimension below us. So as three-dimensional and one vector beings, we can understand and comprehend two-dimensional things. Two-dimensional things thereby should be able to comprehend one-dimensional things. But we can't comprehend one-dimensional things, and thereby we also can't go above, and we can't understand or comprehend four-dimensional or five-dimensional or six-dimensional. Like, it's so crazy, like, it's so rough because,
It
like, you
makes your
want
mind
to.
explode when
Yeah,
you start
it's like,
thinking about it.
and you're like, "Damn it, how do I do this?" And you can't, like, it's just like, it sucks. Um, but I don't know. I really don't know what it is, and I kind of enjoy that.
Mhm.
I think it's a lot of fun. I love the science and behind it. I love the metaphysical behind it. I love seeing the creativity people get um,
Mhm.
around investigating and styles of investigating and methodology. Maybe there's some things I don't necessarily agree with or pertain to or subscribe to, but that doesn't mean that it's wrong.
Mhm.
It's just my own personal belief. And
Mhm.
like opinions, everybody has one. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know what it is, and I'm okay with that. I have a lot of fun with it. I do wish I could get an answer, but on the flip side, if we knew it, then it wouldn't be that interesting, would it? So,
Absolutely not.
like, everybody be like, "All right, we're done. We're gonna go home now. W- We're all
Well,
going to space."
and that's the to me, that's the fun part about, doing the investigations, doing a show like this, and even, being a co-owner of a location like this where you have so many different teams come in, they have so many different styles. We see some people come in and they're just packed to the gills with, equipment, and they're just
Blinky
taking
lights.
themselves yeah, taking themselves so seriously. They come in and, they're right to it. And then you have the others that, it's just it's a friends trip, that they're out with just their friends. They come in, and there's certain areas here in the jail that tends to communicate and react a little bit better to the people who are maybe not taking themselves so seriously and kind of cutting up and hanging out. So it's interesting to see what people are coming in with,
Hmm.
how their style of investigating, and then just what they get in the type of activity they get. And again, it's like anything else, where you can, be here one night, it's completely quiet, and maybe a little something subtle happens. Other times pictures are getting ripped off the wall. And so when that happens, it's interesting to if you sort of keep a log, and when you keep a log on this and just sort of see what works and what doesn't. But then I think you've got that human element as well, that you can say they wanna cut up with the people, but it may just be that they like that person,
Hmm.
kinda like us. There's people you enjoy hanging out with, people you enjoy talking to, and others you could really care less, even though they're a great person and easy to talk to. So
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, and that's why I like the experiments around everybody asking the same question kind of deal,
mhm,
because everybody has a different personality. A different. It could be anything. It could be any characteristic that or maybe it's, oh well, that looks like my brother or my dad or
mhm.
whatever. And so there's a level of comfort there, the way they talk, the words they use, their accent. I
Could
mean,
be their
there
vibration level too.
it could be anything. Who
Yeah.
knows? And so I like to try out things like that.
Mhm,
And I will say that on the flip side, I hate interrogating. I wouldn't want to be interrogated myself. So like I try, I'll introduce myself and I'll say, "What is your name?" "My
mhm.
name's Steve. What's your name?" And I feel like that's a respectful way to ask that.
Absolutely.
Not just walking in there, "Tell us your name. How old are..." I mean, like, like, why do you care? Like, um, and so, I try to approach it. I still like to have fun, right? It's a
Mhm.
hobby. I'm not making any money off this. I'm losing money and you know uh uh making my wife angry at me when I spend things like on she's giving me hell about Amazon Prime Day. Uh but um it's just like, I try to have fun still. But I am there to learn.
Yeah.
And I try to make that intention clear, and I think a lot of it is about your intention. If you go in there, and I'll tell anybody, especially when we host events and stuff, you go into a location with bad intentions, bad attitude, and you're provoking, you're going to get a negative experience.
Mhm.
If you go in there with a positive attitude, you're there to communicate, have fun, have a good time with it. But you're there to communicate and get to know whatever's there, whoever's there. You're going to have a positive experience and a positive interaction. You're still going to have an interaction.
That's right.
It's just what you get out of it. I mean, I don't know. Some people like to provoke, and I think it's silly. I think maybe there's very, very specific times,
Mhm.
and places that it might be
It's
okay.
acceptable in a few places like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think by far and large, like, you go into some of these locations and people just want to provoke, and I'm like, why?
Mhm.
Like, they didn't do anything bad. They didn't do anything mean to you. Why are you going in there into essentially their home, right? Their living
Mhm.
room, and now you're provoking them, and like, that's not fun. I wouldn't be okay if somebody busted down my front door and walked in, sat on my couch, and like asked me what my name was and what my favorite color is, and then started yelling at me. Like that
Right.
wouldn't be fun.
Well, we wouldn't do that with people today. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
with
like, why
living
would you do
people.
that to
So why would you
anybody?
do that to to a spirit or someone
Yeah,
that's in another dimension? I mean, why would you do that? It just, again, there's few situations I can see it being kind of pertinent to the situation, but very rare.
yeah, and then I wouldn't even
Respect
say
is.
it's a negative thing. Like, when, like, at a jail, for example,
Mhm.
if you're trying to utilize maybe a trigger,
Mhm.
um
Like a CO or
word, yeah, like a
yeah.
trigger experience, right? And you want to use those terms. It's
Mhm.
not really like a negative derogatory thing. You are
Right.
trying to use a trigger experience, a trigger word, a trigger item, a trigger whatever it is, music, sound, to see if you can get an interaction and what that interaction is.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily about, you know being negative. It's,
Mhm.
this is what occurred here at this location,
Mhm.
right? This is what happened. And so, not taking it into that provoking space, but, you know, using some of the things that would have been shouted out down the halls, right? Like, I
Mhm.
know that there are very specific, and not being like a prison guard or anything, but having watched some of that stuff on TV, there are lines that you almost hear like religiously at every prison that they will yell down the hall, right?
Mhm.
Um and so, you use that to see if you can get activity, and what activity, and does it happen every time, and all that.
Mhm.
um but, there's a time and a place, and you don't want to start doing that at locations where, that I mean, I wouldn't go and act like a prison guard at a plantation home. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
so it's all about the location. You got to know the location. Yeah, respect. I like it. I like everybody's like
Absolutely.
like really like honing in on it. Um, but it's knowing the location, knowing what went on there, and then utilizing that history to
Mhm.
try to interact. Like, I think that makes sense. And the same thing I've seen. I love some of the ideas of like John Sable, and he doesn't like to
Mm.
throw equipment out. Um,
Mhm.
and his whole idea is getting the entire location, the entire place, as a trigger. And so, we had him to the tavern one time, and um, we had this whole dinner, and the entire dinner we worked with our chef at the tavern, and the entire dinner was foods prepped in the same way, the same ingredients, the same smells that people from, like, the 1860s would have had it, right?
Mhm.
We asked all of our guests to dress very, either from that time period, if they had any civilian or like military, like Civil War clothing, that would be amazing. If not, just dress in very plain clothing. No,
Hmm.
no, like, no
Like
words,
no
no
logo wear.
logo, nothing like that. You know, basic shirt, slacks, something like that.
Hmm.
We played colonial music for the entirety of the dinner. We didn't use candles because it's an old building; it would go up
Yeah.
like a tinderbox. So we brought in electric candles, like these,
Hmm.
and we had those as our lighting,
Hmm.
right? And so we had this whole dinner. We asked folks to talk, in sort of a dialect, not like you had to, but we're like, please don't talk about like basketball or your football, your favorite football team, those sorts of things, right? Um, and it was really, really neat because we started investigating, and the one thing that we did, Tom, were you there? I don't remember if you were there, Tom. Um, the one thing that we did was we did set up cameras,
Hmm.
and so we set up cameras and we actually like hid them in corners of the room, and we did that hours before we even started the dinner. We did that
Okay.
way before. Oh, Tom, you were there. Awesome. I have a horrible memory, man. Um, and so we did that hours before so that they would be like accustomed to this device being in the
Hmm.
environment in the corner over here. Um, oh, there's Dan. Hi, Dan. How's it going, Dan? We were talking about you earlier, Dan. Um, and we so we set that up. We set up audio recorders, and we did not allow any of the blinky light stuff. We're like, we don't want anything. Oh, you did, didn't you? That's right. Um, and so Tom played a prisoner in the jail. So yeah, so here's what we did. So we said, if you want to run a piece of equipment, it can't make noise, it can't make sounds, you can stuff it in your pocket, and that's about it.
Okay.
um, because we wanted the entire environment, the entire thing to be a trigger. And
Hmm.
so we didn't like reenact things. Like we didn't reenact the war or anything like that. We just built scenes around what would have been a typical day during that
Hmm.
time period for these people. And it was amazing. Like we're playing out the scene and just communicating and being present, and we're hearing full on conversations in the other room over here, or a door opening and closing over here in this other
Wow.
spot. And it was so cool just to experience. um, One of the things that we did was, so not only do we have an investigate the tavern, but when you come to one of our investigations, we get to investigate the tavern. We investigate the third oldest courthouse in America, and that's where Patrick Henry gave argued the Parsons cause, which was taxation without representation, one of the sparks of the American Revolution. And then we also investigate what is called the Old Stone Jail.
Okay.
So we had three buildings. All right. And what we did was, when we did one scene in one building, we had people in all three buildings seeing if activity would spike up anywhere else.
Oh, okay.
All right. And so in one situation, we had a female sit in the judge's chair in the courthouse.
Okay.
And when we did that, you actually heard a door open and close in the courthouse, and it's a small courthouse. And people in the tavern were reporting hearing tons of footsteps and doors, as if people were like going outside to go to the courthouse. Like, oh my god, like a woman sat down, in the judge's chair and was like trying to preside. Um, so it was really wild. And then what we did, we replaced her and had a man sit up there, and we brought in a one of our teammates, a prisoner. We brought him as a
Hmm.
prisoner. Um, Shut up, Dan. Now I'm gonna sit on my hands, Dan. Uh,
It's going to give you a complex there.
he always does. um, so this other time, or this other scene, we had brought in a prisoner, and we convicted him. We had a very brief mock trial, and we decided that he was going to be executed. He was going to be hung. And that's something that happened at the property that is very typical. There was a gallows outside, and when public executions were no longer a thing, they were brought indoors. And
Mm.
so we took him inside, and what we did was we escorted him into the jail, and we walked him up the steps, and we didn't hang a rope on him, we laid a rope on his shoulder. I want to be very clear. uh
Mhm.
we didn't put anything around his neck. We just put a rope on his shoulder and then laid him down to signify that he had been hung.
Okay.
Um, and Tom, you were in there, um, and so we actually heard whistling, like the death
Ah.
whistling, like when prisoners are walking to their death,
Mhm.
like their execution. We actually recorded whistling in the building as we were walking him up the steps and to hang him. And it, I mean, and so you had that. You had at the same time things were going on in the courthouse, and at the same time there was talking and lots of movement recorded in the tavern. So it's really neat when a lot of people when they investigate they're focusing on one place at one
Mhm.
time, and the experiences that go on there are isolated. What we were able to really experience that particular night was tying all three of these buildings, which were tied together in history, very very much so,
Mhm.
um, and being able to experience that, like, we literally stepped back in time. um and I mean, it was wild. Like, I've never
Wow.
experienced anything like that since. And just seeing everything tied together, and just it was like watching a play.
Do you
uh
think it triggered residual activity?
I don't know. And so the way that John Sable looks at it is like peeling back layers.
Okay.
Like he's is a ghost excavator, and he's actually an archaeologist, and so he relates it to layers and digging back layers and moving back layers and really focusing on those specifically.
Mhm.
And the idea is that if there is a spirit or an entity, whatever you want to call it, a ghost that's there, that maybe they are more comfortable interacting and being part of that experience with you
Mhm.
because they are familiar with it.
Mhm.
Like, if I mean, it's the same thing. Like, when you go into a location that's 300 years old, 400 years old, and you're bringing a bunch of these blinky light devices and
Mhm.
stuff, um, that sort of stuff probably would be considered witchcraft.
Yeah.
And if you're in early colonial America, witchcraft was a very scary thing. It's not
Mhm.
today, thankfully, but then it was. That was
Oh,
Satan
it was of
worship,
the devil.
and
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that you stayed away from that stuff. So it's really interesting where you pull that out of the equation, and now you're getting all this activity, and it's so wildly different than what you normally experience when you're investigating that site. um, so I love it. I love it.
How many people did you guys have there that night? I mean, I guess because my thought is it's like, having all these people, especially if you had, quite a few, all in one accord, I would imagine that could be pretty hard, unless you have a smaller group or
It
know
was
the folks
limited.
really well. Yeah.
It was limited. I think we had in total, we brought them down. It was an event, but I think we had maybe 20 guests that night, and they were spread entirely across. The tavern is three stories. The courthouse is not too big. The jail is 2 stories. So we had probably 30 people on site, spread across 3 buildings. And we were able. I mean, we set the precedence ahead of time. Like, this is not your
Mhm.
normal investigation. We're trying something very specific. We're trying something very unique, and it's a rare opportunity because we haven't done it since at the tavern. Like, we've done very specific, like very tiny versions of it, but there
Mhm.
hasn't been a single investigation where we have just said, okay, we are gonna like really set the scene again and do this entire thing, because it took a lot of time
Yeah.
and effort to like John. And like Dan was saying, you've read one of his books, and he's been to Hinsdale. He takes a lot of time and effort into everything he does. And so when we started talking about this, he needed months to prep these scenes and these ideas and what we're going to need and what this is going to encompass. And then we started talking about what time periods we wanted to focus on, because we
Wow.
knew we were only going to be able to get to 2 or 3 in a night. You think about it, it's like a production, right? You're not going to
Mhm.
be able to do everything. He had written out like 5 or 6 scenes. We did like 3 of them. um, and so we said we want to focus on this time period, this time period, and this time period, and let's try, let's change it up. And we had to wait between each like scene, right? We would wait and let kind of like the
Kinda
environment.
cleanse the palate, kinda.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so we'd do something, we'd give it a half hour, 45 minutes, and then we do another scene. And it was really cool. But I mean, we were very clear, like, this is gonna be different, man. This is gonna be very different, and everybody was on board. Yeah, it was really cool, guys. If you ever have a chance to meet
That's
John Sable,
fascinating.
or talk with him, or join him for anything, actually, I know he just got access again to a hotel that they do ghost tours and investigations at. I guess they stopped it for a little while, and he's back in there. So if you have the opportunity, I can't remember. I'll have to look it up, but um, he is phenomenal. I love his work, and the idea um, that he brings to the field is so different than what a lot of people do. It's called the Omni Bedford Springs Resort and Spots in Bedford, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So if you have the chance, man, John Sable and his partner Mary are phenomenal folks, and they're super cool to just talk with and learn from. So they're great. I
Absolutely.
love it, and I
Well,
love I love it. It's so cool stuff.
well, you have just totally introduced me to quite a few different people that I'm going to need to go and look up a little bit more about. And that's what I was really looking forward to chatting with you about on this, because you do have, you do your research, and you do a lot of. I mean, you know your stuff, and you look and surround yourself with fascinating people that are trying so many new and interesting things in the field. So,
I'm weird, and I
definitely.
like weird people, like Dan.
And I encourage everyone that's that got on late, or that's wasn't able to make it through the entire show, look through the comments, because we've got a bunch of different links in there, that different folks to check out their research, that sort of thing. And we're getting close to wrapping things up here, Steve, so go ahead, plug your places again, and also some anything you've got coming up.
Sure. Yes, weird is very good. Weird is preferable. Um,
Yes.
So, if you want to come and join me at an event, my team is in Central Virginia. It's Transcend Paranormal. We partner with tons of different historical locations in the area. One of the really fun things that we do is when you investigate with us, 100% of the proceeds goes directly to that historical site. So not only did you get to have fun, but all that money goes into historical preservation, restoration, and a lot of times educational programming. So it's really good opportunity to give back to the community, and we get to be weird. We get to have fun in the middle of the night. So it's Transcend Paranormal, transcendparanormal.com, or on Facebook. So come and join us. It's a lot of fun. This weekend we'll be at Henricus, which also slides me into the next thing. You can also find me on the Ghost Finders season 11 with Dan. And hello. Oh my God, you've got two remotes. Okay. Um, sorry. um, you can find me on the Ghost Finders season 11. That is Ghost Finders on Facebook. And I can't remember our website. What's our website, Dan? I think it's probably just theghostfinders.com. It is theghostfinders.com. God, I'm good. So you can find all of current season and upcoming releases on Paraflix, exclusively on Paraflix, including this Saturday, July 16th. Not only will be investigating Henricus, but the latest episode for the Ghost Finders will be on this Saturday. I think it's at 10 p.m. EST is when it drops. And it is on Henricus Historical Park. So it's going to be really cool because I am going to get to watch this episode of us investigating Henricus while I'm at Henricus. So it's gonna be like it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be kind of cool. It's like one of those, what's that movie, Inception. It's gonna be like an Inception thing.
There you go.
It's going to be interesting. And I'm also the current seating president for the Hanover Tavern Foundation, and that is the Hanover Tavern here in Hanover, Virginia. So if you really want to find me and a lot of me in a place where I spend way too much time and my wife gets angry at me for it, you can find me at the tavern. And I don't have any specific times that I'm there. It's just like all of the time. Um, and I'm always doing a slew of different things, but it's great. same thing. We're doing a lot of historical preservation and restoration, and educational programming. We do some really big outreach. We bring in about 3,000 kids a year. Well, not with COVID, but um, prior to that, and hopefully coming up soon, we actually bring them in. It's fourth graders and fifth graders, and we teach them about some of the Rev War and Civil War, and the history here in Virginia, which is really neat and it's a lot of fun. So come and hang out. The tavern is really cool because not only do we have a historic museum upstairs and you get to see the tavern, but we also have an actual theater. And that theater dates back to the 1950s and it's still in operation. It's called the Barksdale Theater. And so they put on 3 to 4 plays a year at the tavern. We also have a full restaurant and bar, so you can come and get your food on, and it's some pretty good eats, unbiasedly. Um, and it's great. We do ghost tours, and you might see me and talk for 2 hours about stupid, weird stuff. But we do all that, so it's gonna be great. We'll have a lot of fun. But yeah, so you can find me in a lot of different spots, and I seem to pop up in a lot of weird places. So
And if they wanna follow what you're doing, they can also do that, what, on your Facebook,
oh,
your
yes, I did
public.
create that, didn't I?
Yeah,
Good,
you did.
good. I totally forgot about that, Miranda. God, you're good. She's good, everybody.
I
Yeah.
try.
So, so I guess a couple days ago, I created a public page for me. I think it's just Steve Dills. Um, and follow me on there because like I'm trying to organize the chaos. I'm trying to bring it to some level of organization, and so I figured that by introducing something else to the plate was probably best. No, I just my private profile page is just getting crazy. There's a lot of people and a lot of things that I'm missing, and I'm missing like friends and family posts and all that. And so I was like, and on top of that, I'm like the weird guy. Like okay, so super weird, but we were having like a neighborhood party the other night and they were yes, I'm gonna be the best year. I was gonna talk about that. And we were having a neighborhood party the other night, right? And so like um uh you know one of my neighbor's kids comes over and he's like a teenager, and I have literally never talked to this kid, and he's a great kid, he's a super nice kid, but I had never talked to him before. And he sits down next to me and he's like, so I hear he's like, so what do you think about this picture? And he pulls up his phone and he's like, it's at Gettysburg. And it's like something, right? Like it's some sort of apparition. And I'm like, that's interesting. And I was like, so, but like, tell me, I was like, why are you asking me? Like, there's a bunch of people here at this party. Why are you coming up to me, like weird dad guy? Um, and he's like, oh, well, we love the ghost stuff. And my parents told me that you were an investigator and they told me all about it. I was like, this is so weird. So I don't know. It's just like weird. It's just like worlds collide and it's odd. So I'm still kind of getting used to all that stuff. But yes, so I did create a page. So if you want to follow me there, that's Steve Dills, and I'm just gonna post just random stuff. It's gonna be a lot of fun. And then I'm gonna be at Gettysburg Bash next month too, and
Can't
I am
forget the
excited about it.
bash.
I've not been to the Bash before, so I'm super stoked.
I've not
Um,
either. I've not either. I hope to make it one day.
yes, so I Dan was gonna be up there, and Dan was like, you can come crash the bash with me. So I'm gonna be up there with Dan, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but Dan is gonna be there Friday. I'll be there Friday as well. And then Saturday I'll be hanging out and Sunday, repping the Ghost Finders and Transcend and everything in between. And hopefully Dan leaves me some Hinsdale swag, because I'll steal it and not sell it. But maybe I'll sell it. But who knows? Who knows? I love it. I love all the Hinsdale designs. They're so sick. I love them. But yeah, so I'll be up at the bash. I'm excited. I'm excited. I love
Nice.
Gettysburg, and I've never been to the bash, and I've always wanted to. So it's gonna be cool.
Yeah, and Pam's just good people. I
Hmm.
had her on the show I guess it was about 2 months ago, and, I mean, they start early planning for this because, I mean, it's such a big deal and for such a great cause, so,
Yes.
uh
I like it. I like that it's for a good cause, and that's I like to be part of things that like are for a good purpose, and it's not for lining your own pockets, and I'm totally behind that. Like I love when people are being selfless and like getting out there for the greater good, and I think that's so cool, and it's so fun to get behind, and see people getting excited about that. And that's why I like Transcend. We do all this fundraising, and we're this coming Saturday. What's really neat is for this event, 50% of the proceeds are going to Henricus Historical Park, and 50% are going to Scares That Care. And Scares That Care is a nonprofit organization that sponsors 3 families every year, $10,000. And it's one family that has a child with terminal illness,
Mm.
one that has a burn victim, and one that has breast cancer. And if they can get a
Wow.
fourth family, they will push a fourth family. But it's so cool because they have so many people that are very um, passionate and involved, and it's such a fun thing to get behind when there's so many people that are just like really, really passionate about it. So if you come and hang out with me on Saturday, not only can we watch the latest episode of Ghost Finders together, at Henricus of Henricus, but we get to support Scares That Cares and Henricus, so it's fun. I love it.
Nice. Nice. Well, everyone, definitely go check out the links. We've got them posted in the show notes. We've also got them posted throughout the comments here. So definitely go check out Steve's personal page there on, or his new personal page there on Facebook. The Ghost Finders. I mean, those guys are awesome. They hit some great spots. Got some great episodes out there. Transcend and the Hanover Tavern. So, I know you can definitely find an event that you're going to enjoy and a cause that you're going to want to help. So, so Steve, thank you so much. I've
Yeah, thank you
really
for having me
enjoyed having you
on.
on. Yeah,
I was excited when I saw Miranda. I was like, Miranda popped up. She's like, "Hey," and I was like, "Ah, yes!"
well,
I was
I am
excited.
so glad you did. I knew it'd be a great conversation, and that I could talk to you, so much more, just because I love hearing your theories and putting those out there, and you learn a lot.
Mhm.
I mean, from talking to guys like you, and I know when we did the investigation out there at St. Albans, that was a lot of fun. I learned a lot from you guys. So,
Yeah, and you inspired me to go wander around
well,
St.
thank you.
Albans by myself because even at St. Albans, I'm still like I know St. Albans pretty well now, but I'm still like a little iffy on going by myself places. And then Miranda like busting in here, like very first time ever been to St. Albans, she's like, "All right, I'll see you guys later. I'm going this way." And I was like, "Oh shit!" Like she's gone. Because I told one of my teammates, I was like, "She's got balls." And like, like, and then we got towards the end of the night, and we're like, "Has anybody seen Miranda?" And there's like, "No." And I was like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "I don't know if she's still here. Like, I don't have her cell phone number." And so I was like, "Shit." I was like, "You know what?" But I saw her going live earlier, and so I checked, and you sure shit, you're still alive. And I was like, "I'm gonna find her now." I'm like, I know exactly what she.
I know you guys showed up and you were like, "I found you by your live." And, it's funny because that's probably one of the longest lives I've ever done. I wanna say I almost was on live for 3 hours that night.
Hmm.
And, all my West Coast friends, they were all just because it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're all popping on, it's like midnight, and my phone is literally dying, and they're like, "Please don't go." And I was trying to plug it into an external battery
Yes, I
just to
remember that. I remember
just
that
to
because you're like, my
just to
phone's
pull a
almost
little bit
dead.
more. Yeah, and so but I was literally live, I think, for 3 hours that night, and they were with me as I was getting lost the entire time. But there was a
Oh
couple
man.
times, I mean, it was creepy because I would just find a little corner. I would set my little tools up and before I went live and just kinda sit there, and I was really quite amazed because, I mean, there wasn't really a whole lot of us that were there, and then as the night went on,
It
there was
was
really
like
only
dropped.
like, what,
I
maybe 4 or 5 of us?
Yeah, it was you were in the building. I was there with Alan and one of my other buddies.
Yeah.
And then I
Mark,
think
was it?
yeah, and then I think Marcel, but Marcel hangs out down like in the offices. So
Yeah.
it was like towards the end there for a good solid hour and a half. I think it was just the four of us. And maybe the Connor sisters, but they were busy talking to Marcel. They were making her laugh her ass off. So
Yeah.
I think it was literally just the four of us, like minus this one office. It was the four of us in the entire building by ourselves. Uh,
Yeah, and
and
I didn't even know if you guys were in there because I felt like I was in, like, a time warp for a while because I never ran into anybody. I
yeah,
think I
you can
just
walk
stayed
and
in
just
this little
walk.
circle.
You can just walk and walk and walk and then walk some more. and then like you said earlier, you just end up at alcoholics,
Yeah.
and you're like, how did I get here? And you're like, you have no idea.
Yeah.
But it's cool.
Well, again, thank you, Steve, and thank you
Thank
everybody
you.
over here in the chat room. It's great night. Definitely go check out Steve's stuff. And let's see, let me pull up. I believe I know who's on next week, but I don't want to misspeak. Let's see. Whoops. Next week I have Miss Marie. She was over here in the chat room a little bit earlier. Miss Buffy. She's going to be
Awesome.
on. Yeah, we're going to be
Very
talking
cool.
about some really cool stuff. I know her partner in crime there on her podcast on the podcast, Tim Hopper. He was there in the chat room. Not sure if he's still there. And then the next week, I don't know if there's going to be anybody on. I can't say a whole lot about it just yet, but I'm actually filming in Chicago, and so I will be flying back
Mhm.
from that date. So yeah,
Fancy.
yeah. So hopefully I can. I'm doing a little hosting, and hopefully I'll be able to talk about that pretty soon. So some exciting stuff going on there that'll be happening in 2 weeks. So, and again, investigating tomorrow night. Probably won't be able to go live, but you never know. Might surprise y'all and be able to pop up there.
Get
And yep,
lost for 2 hours.
that's right. Yeah, I think I may be doing a little bit of sleeping in a location as well. So, looking forward to that. But yeah, a lot of different things going on. Check out the historic Scott County Jail website for tours that we've got going on, ghost walks, flashlight tours, guided ghost hunts, led by myself and my business partner, Dr. Christy Sumner. So a lot of cool things going on, and be on the lookout for that escape room and a couple different ghost biker events that's going to be coming up in September and October. I keep teasing and saying that those are going to be coming out really soon, but we're still working on some different details because there's some motorcycle rides and okay, kitty, some some motorcycle rides and such. That's she's staring at me so intently here. It's
It's like you're done.
yeah, she's
Pet me.
button heads with the mic there. Um, so anyway, so stay on the lookout for those because tickets will be becoming available for those pretty soon. So again, thank you all so much, and until next week, we'll see you back here. So good night, everyone.
See everybody. Good night.